Today we focus on the Gigapress and its impact on Tesla in the short and long-term future. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. We also want to note this is a copyrighted broadcast, so any reproduction of anything said during this show is prohibited without permission. So one of the things that happened is we actually did a show focused on the fact that production had begun for the Gigafactory in Austin as well as in Germany. What's going on is that the Gigapresses, I believe 2 of them at both facilities, are now pumping out parts that are being married with other parts, and vehicles are being completed all the way through the paint shop. All these vehicles are labeled test currently, but if the quality level is adequate, they will actually be put into inventory and sold to customers. So I'd have to say that I'm a little bit slightly on the missed the boat realm. I've actually chosen today to do a split screen where we're rolling footage of Idra building the machine, obviously with the Tesla colors. This Tesla is the first customer for this product, and we expect that if it works as well as Elon has planned, either he buys the company or he ends up ordering so many machines that the backlog will limit the ability of this firm to sell the same machine to competitors. So the question is, what is the Gigapress? From Wiki, Gigapress are a series of aluminum die casting machines manufactured by Idra Group in Italy. They are notable for being the largest high-pressure die casting machines in the world, with a clamping force of 55,000 to 61,000 kilonewtons. Each machine weighs 410 to 430 tons, 900,000 to 950,000 pounds. Base specification Gigapress machine had been included in Idra's catalog since 2018 with a usage of custom OL 6100 CS Gigapress started by Tesla in late 2020 for the production of chassis parts for the Tesla Model Y. Shots of molten aluminum weighing 80 kilograms are injected into cold chamber casting mold with a velocity of 10 meters per second, 22 miles per hour. The cycle time is 80 to 90 seconds, allowing an output rate of 40 to 45 completed castings per hour, or 1,000 castings per day. So that gives you a sense for the throughput of the machines that Tesla is putting in. Now, we actually thought that the machine would actually be delayed maybe long-term after there was a fire on the first installed machine outside the building in Fremont. So my estimation was Tesla would simply go back to using its regular methods of putting together the front and rear of the vehicle and then, putting together everything with the skateboard as they've been doing in both China as well as in Fremont for the last several years. I was kind of shocked to learn from the factory that there is no plan B. Tesla actually plans right now to only use the Gigapress and produce vehicles from the 2 presses that are in place. Now, I would say that I'm very surprised by this because that's a big risk to take to not have a plan B, given that machines of that size could be temperamental. And so I would have to say that in this case, it seems to me that Elon has actually handed the keys to Tesla's future over to the general manager of Idra. And based on Elon's thoroughness and his team's thoroughness, I actually think it works, but I'd have to say I'm a bit shocked at this development, because I guess you do have the backup plan if you could run production through either Fremont or China if things got really bad and it didn't work. But my understanding is they've been running a lot of production off of these machines through Fremont already, and they've stabilized the management of these machines successfully. So congratulations to Idra Group as well as Tesla on getting these machines in place. The next question that pops up is, well, why did they do it? There are a bunch of data points I've heard that surprised me on this. One of them that was kind of a shock was that Elon was saying that by the installation of these machines, they've eliminated as many as 300 robots. And so a robot, in theory, for what they're, how they use them, and frequency is 600,000, and then you add software and all the other stuff. So it could be $1 million a robot, or about $300 million in spending that isn't going to robots because of the number of parts that are taken out. I'm told it's 65 different sort of parts are eliminated by the ability to cast in this way. So we now have an interesting situation where there is no plan B. This has to work. Otherwise, there'll be major shutdown time to modify and go back to the old process. So I feel like this sounds kind of risky, but clearly the Tesla folks feel like the uptime will be sufficient to not have to worry about any problems that they may have with one or both machines being down, and then that affects schedules that you have for production. So I would say right now that if these machines in fact work, I'm calling them the $1 trillion machines, because according to what we read, there's a 40% cost reduction when it comes to manufacturing. So when you blend that with Tesla making its own batteries, I would not be surprised if we're facing a 50 or so % cut in the per vehicle cost that Tesla is experiencing. And that's, again, obviously adding the 4680 to this new press's capabilities. And I believe what this tells us then is that Tesla can retain a 30%-ish profit margin and cut the price of their vehicles in half. And I clearly think that's a huge competitive advantage relative to other firms that have to compete with them. So I'd say it's pretty obvious that this is a worthwhile effort. I'm kind of shocked because, you know, if Tesla didn't have the kind of volume of production it already has, I would say Elon is betting the company on this solution. And the reality is that because there was no expectations at this point on the company in terms of how this would work, this is just gravy for the next 2 or 3 months on the additional production that are coming from these machines and the new process that these machines lend to. As you know from our previous show, the situation right now is that what happens is the front and rear of the car are produced in these presses. They're then cooled down from about 8,000 degrees to about 400 degrees, at which time they're removed from the press by robots and then married to the front and rear of the vehicle / with the roof. And now you have a finished car that is headed towards paint. And the amount of human contact with the whole process is limited. Now, the marrying of the vehicles, what percentage, you know, we know it's the skateboard, et cetera. Is it the roof as well? Is that another robot system? That I don't know. But there is a marrying process that goes on, and it is set up to be done by robots. So I think it's great to hear what's going on here and what the potential is of it that's going on. So, you know, obviously you can count the numbers up. If you potentially have 1,000 vehicles per day capable, and you have 2 presses at each of the new locations and 1 press at the old locations, I think there's a process going on where Tesla is building up to put presses times 2 at least, if not more, at all of their locations. This is also kind of interesting because all of a sudden places like Fremont that are tight for space currently might be able to reduce the amount of floor space held by the old process and transition over to this new process, and therefore be able to get better throughput without growing the size of the factory in both Fremont and in China. So what do I think of all this? Well, if you can cut the price of the vehicle in half and potentially increase your profit margin while you're doing so, that's a lot of flexibility at lower prices, bring in new customers at lower prices, and have to worry about margins. So I'd have to say, if this works, it's brilliant, and it forces competitors to rethink everything they're doing to be able to compete with this process. And I would also say that this is probably going to be the beginning of the end for certain companies that have high costs, both labor and manufacturing costs, that won't allow them to sort of drop down to this price range. So they bottom line end up disappearing over time. So what do I think is going to happen with Tesla on this? I think if it works and we start getting throughput towards October as discussed, we're going to easily have Tesla hit 1 million vehicles this calendar year. And if we're at full production, i.e. something like 5,000 to 10,000 vehicles a month from both factories, it smashes through 1 million vehicles for this year, heading for 1.2 or 1.3 million, which is going to give Tesla stock price a huge boost. And I think that as the machines come in and are brought into current facilities, you're also going to see there an acceleration. So I just think that I'm smelling easily 2 million vehicles sooner than later, but the hunt for 3 or 4 million vehicles a year will be very easy to do, and you may not have to add that much more manufacturing space to get to those numbers. So congrats to Idra Group, congrats to Tesla and Elon on what the plan is. Prior to getting to our conclusion, I wanted to encourage you to remember to like and subscribe. Please also take time to join us on Patreon for some trading investment tips that I think you'll find helpful in your process on both. So the other conclusion that we're coming to with this whole thing is that, yes, Elon is going to get a cost advantage over competitors and be able to deliver great vehicles from the battery perspective as well as the car perspective that give it a superior competitive position. I really think that I've been hearing discussions of whether Tesla's going to be 1,000 or 1,300 by the end of the year, given how the Gigapress production is going to affect everything. And I'd have to say, you know, hey, if you can do 2,000 cars a day from the current setup, and we're only expecting 5,000 vehicles a week, and this thing gets to scale, even half scale of what it can do, let's say 500 cars per Gigapress per day times a 5 to 7 day week. You know, as you can see, the numbers can get very large very quickly. So I think the only hope right now for competitors, if they don't get their own version of this machine, is hopefully Tesla has some short, perhaps long-term startup hiccups. But I'd have to say it's hard to see that happening given the number that have been purchased and the amount of test runs that were done in the previous factory. I appreciate your indulgence on embracing watching the machine being put together as a split screen, because I just think that this may be the most important development in the manufacture of cars in the last 50 to 70 years. And if it works, it's going to be devastating to the industry and a huge boost to Tesla going into the future. I guess my final note on this whole thing is just the fact that if you go back and study what happened with Tesla and the robots they put in, the technical staff of Tesla is so good that they actually reprogrammed the robots and sent those specs to be the new firmware and brains for the robots used by Tesla. And that's how sharp the technical staff is. So I really think that if anybody can pull it off of getting their people trained and ready to get the most out of this piece of equipment, it's Tesla, because they just have superior engineering going on in terms of who they have on the floor. And they're the first place to install this. And I believe it's going to be huge. It's already big, but I think it's going to be unbelievably huge. And so, again, congrats to Tesla, Elon, etc. We look forward to giving you more information about this as we get it. But, man, I think it's brave not having Plan B. But if you know the machines will work properly, don't need a Plan B. Finally, we wanted to get into our health tips. As you know, we always recommend getting out in nature. I just did so this morning and did some biking as a way to do what's called forest bathing. Also highly recommend that prior to lovemaking, you consider a salad or something very small as a way to avoid any issues with blood flow to your stomach versus being available to other extremities. And then we also have a list, one more that I'll add that's on our list below this video is a reminder, don't go to bed within 4 hours of eating, minimum 2, to allow the food to digest prior to doing so. And this helps avoid cancer and acid reflux issues. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss German, Salam, Muslim, Zdravstvuyte Russian, Ni hao ma, Chinese, Konbanwa Japanese, Namaste Hindi, Zdravstvuyte Russian, Hey Do Swedish, G'day our friends in Australia, and in Jamaica we say Enough respect, walk Woodman. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, and bye for now.